Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This episode, entitled The Number One Sign of the Rapture, is being brought to you by Dawn of Destiny. Hello, this is Wiley Edmonds, your host for this program, and I ask that you kindly forgive me for the low quality of this audio, since we are still in learning mode and learning as we go. My personal greatest challenge will be to keep this important theme of this episode inside a framework of about a quarter of an hour or less than 15 minutes, if possible. As many of you, if not most of you particularly, with a full gospel background, I've heard all of my life that Jesus was coming soon. Against a background of thousands of years, that is very true. However, compared relatively to the human life, it's not so much. Let's take a look at exactly what's going on in the light of Bible prophecy and relative to the rapture. How close are we really? And let's examine the precise details given by Jesus himself as he sat among his disciples on the side of the Mount of Olives, answering just that question. Jesus delineated a plethora of direct prophecies that must be fulfilled prior to his return. At the very outset, Jesus explicitly warned that they be not deceived, for many would be going out in his name and would deceive many. He pointed to the magnificent temple just across the way and said, the time is coming that temple will be so destroyed that not even one stone will be left upon another. He went on to explain that they would be driven from their land, that they would be sieved through the nations and be hated and persecuted because of him. Exactly 40 years later, in the year 70 AD, Titus, the general of the mighty Roman army, and soon to be the new Roman emperor, captured and totally destroyed Jerusalem. The temple was so destroyed that not one stone was left upon another, just exactly like Jesus had said it would be. Even the site of the temple was left totally unidentifiable. All Jews were forbidden to continue to dwell there, so that there would never be a chance for them to rebuild again. Even the name of Jerusalem was changed, and most of the people were taken to Rome as slaves. Keep in mind that the prophets 500 years before had declared Jerusalem would be destroyed. It would be laid waste. It would be abandoned. And the only inhabitants of Jerusalem and the environs thereof would be the wild beasts. However, there was always this promise that at the time of the end, the Jews would be regathered from all the nations where they had been scattered and driven, and would be regathered again to Jerusalem. That they would once again, in one day, become a nation and become a mighty and a prosperous people called Israel. We must keep in mind that from 70 AD until 1948, that land that had become known as Palestine after the Jews were forcibly removed, 1,878 years later, against odds that are incalculable, they became a nation again, the nation of Israel. Never in the course of human history has such a thing as this occurred. Same race, same people, same religion, same language, same culture. Impossible. Let's just call it what it is, the fulfillment of biblical prophecy. There was one big caveat, however, that marred this prophecy. In 1947, when the United Nations divided Palestine to create a country for the Jews, they sectioned off Jerusalem in what we today would call gerrymandering. They cut Jerusalem out and gave it to the country of Jordan in what became known as the West Bank. From May 1948 until June 1967, for those of you who understand, Jerusalem was not even in Israeli territory. Recorded in Luke's Gospel, chapter 21, verse 24, Jesus, in the same setting, declared that Jerusalem would be in the hands of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. In June 1967, the neighbors of Israel declared war on the nation of Israel with the decided purpose of annihilating them. However, within the course of only 6 days, the Jewish nation eviscerated those armies, and they captured the Golan Heights and the territory down to the Dead Sea and the Jordan River, including the gerrymandered territory where the city of Jerusalem is located. The Jews have control of that territory now for 57 years, and trust me, they will never relinquish it. Jesus stated that in the last days there would be great wars, the like of which has never been seen before. In the last 100 years, there have been 2 great world wars, completely changing the territorial and the political landscape of the planet. The military powers of this world now possess the nuclear military might to completely obliterate this planet 25 times over. Never have wars created such devastation and suffering as is now ongoing. It may be of some interest to know something that has been missed by the world, that both world wars were fought mainly affecting the legacy of the Jewish people. Both wars started on the exact same day on the Jewish calendar, the 9th day of Av. Av is the Jewish 5th month. That date is an ascribed day of Jewish renown, dating back to the time of Moses, and has played a historical role in the Jewish community, always leading into an era of great change. Today, war again looms large and inevitable, some even proclaiming that the World War III has already begun. War in the Middle East, where history began and where history will end, is likely only days or weeks away. That war will initiate the outset of the time of Jacob's trouble, also recognized as the tribulation of Revelation. Prophecy reveals that the rapture of believers will occur before the tribulation brings God's catastrophic wrath upon a wicked world. Ezekiel chapter 38 declares that a contingent of nations headed by Russia, Turkey, and Iran will invade Israel from the north, declaring they will eliminate the Jewish nation from the earth. This war is known by Bible readers as the War of Gog and Magog. It is almost certain that nuclear warheads will be involved. It won't work out well for the invaders, but much of Israel will be damaged. I will talk more about this in a future program. Did you see the news recently in August where the leaders of these 3 countries met in Tehran, the capital of Iran? The very first such meeting of these nations in history. And let it be of special note that these three nations don't really like or trust each other very much. But they have a common problem with Israel. They want and need Israel's abundant gas reserves. Ezekiel chapter 38 declares that they are coming for Israel's booty. What about climate change? Oh yes, Jesus mentioned climate change as a sign of his soon return. Yes, I believe in the serious nature of climate change in our world today. Now, I don't subscribe to the theory that man has had much to do with it, or that our actions are going to make a serious impact. And it certainly shouldn't be politicized. But the fact of climate change is undeniable. Jesus stated that there would be an increase in earthquakes, severe storms, with the waves of the sea roaring as never before. Climatic phenomenon, ice caps melting. For the first time in recorded history, the wobble of the Earth's axis has shown a slight variation, and the speed of Earth's revolution has slowed down a small but measurable amount. Even the magnetic resonance of the Earth has been found to be weakening. Floods and drought cycles are increasing and becoming ever more severe. The evidence is everywhere. World leaders are using climate change to usher in an all-controlling one world government to save the planet. That will come in under the auspices of the United Nations. The Bible speaks about the single world government in the end times controlled by the Antichrist. And today, in that push for global government, we see the advanced technology that will give the Antichrist the ability to oversee that government, something that prior to today would not be possible. Computer power to control the actions of every human on earth now resides within the control of the world leadership. We, like mice, have already been caught in the glue board and can't escape. Technology, thought to be our salvation, has already become our prison. The world population has embraced and partaken of the bait, from which is proving to be our very own undoing. And now that leads us into the increase in knowledge. Up until 1900, knowledge doubled about every 100 years. By 1950, knowledge was doubling at the rate of every 13 years. By the year 2000, knowledge was doubling at the rate of every 12 days. Today, it is down to every 12 minutes. We are fast approaching what scientists call singularity. Artificial intelligence has now co-opted the technology arena and is at present outpacing the ability of its originators to stay in control. The prophet Daniel received visions relating to what he spoke of as the last days. Daniel did not understand exactly what he was writing about as he told of the message from God. God told him to just write it down and let it be sealed unto the last days when knowledge would be increased. And it could then be understood. And certainly, now as never before, it can be understood. Daniel disclosed at the same time that travel would be exponentially increased. It wasn't until 1903 that the Wright brothers made the first self-propelled sustained flight. By 1969, we had reached the moon. And supersonic travel today is very ordinary. I could go on ad nauseum pointing to the signs directing us toward the time of the end. But the title of this episode is the number one sign of the coming rapture. What is that sign? Well, let us read Matthew 24, verse 3. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? And Jesus answered them and said, Take heed that no man deceive you. Now let us skip down to verse 32, and it says, Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender, and putteth forth leaves, you know that the summer thereof is nigh. So likewise, when ye shall see these things, know that it is near, even at the door. And verily, verily, I say unto you, that this generation shall not pass away until all these things be fulfilled. There we see in verse 33, or the sign of, or the number one sign pointing to the coming of Jesus and the rapture. So likewise ye, when ye shall see all these things come to pass, know ye that the time is nigh and even at the door. So you see, it's the convergence of all of these signs for perhaps the last 100 to 150 years. When you read in the Bible prophecy, you find that it is speaking of the time of the end. Not the end of time, but the time of the end. And that time, the time of the end, is now approaching. It is even at the door. When we see all of these signs coming to pass at the same time, pointing to the very same time in history. So be aware, be awake, and know that Jesus Christ is coming soon. Will you be ready? I hope so. I hope to be able to meet you on the other side before long. God bless you and thank you.